Well, good day, Patrick Johnson. It's we've officially entered quarter zip season. Haven't quite put all the shorts away. Like last weekend, we had 20 degrees. The Canucks are, as we know, are in sunny Miami, or they were. But it's yeah, we've got an atmospheric river, an election upon us. It's exciting times, and the Canucks actually won a game.
Yeah, yeah. A hardworking, hustling JT Miller. Yeah, everybody showed up. It was even Elias Pettersson didn't put up points, but played well. So yeah, it's not a hope springs eternal because we're descending into fall and winter. But there's hope for light, or I don't know what it is, Paul. But people are feeling all right again, I guess, after one game, despite feeling sad for three games.
Well,
It's
I'm not
it's Canucks
suggesting
hockey.
I'm not suggesting they hang a banner, but to be the champs, you got to beat the champs, right?
Yeah, true.
So,
Yeah. Well, and that's what I said in my post game. Like, listen, this was a team that was wounded. They're missing a couple guys. They were dealing with, they played a bunch. So I think it's 3 games in 4 nights. Like, this is a win you got to take, and the Canucks did. I mean, it
yeah.
wasn't easy. You would have liked to have seen them win, clear away 4-2 or something like that. But they got the win, and they played reasonably well defensively, and they had 29 shots on goal, Paul. They had been the worst sort of shooting team in the NHL, obviously just 3 games, but among the teams that had played 3 games, they had hit the net the least of any team in the NHL. And that's not true anymore because they fired 29 shots on Sergei Bobrovsky. And let's be clear, Sergei Bobrovsky played great, and the Canucks might have won 4 or 5-2, but for Sergei Bobrovsky. So that's the kind of game you want to see. And hockey, more than ever, is not about a game of extremes. It's about finding your way, in this really pretty narrow band of results. And sometimes that means you lose a game to the Calgary Flames that you shouldn't lose, like they did on opening night. And sometimes you win a game that was tight. You might have lost in similar circumstances, but a bit of luck and a bit of finish. And here we are. They're 1-0. What are they? 1-1-2? Is that right?
They're the epitome of 500.
Yeah.
They've played 4 games. They've won one, lost one, and got loser points in 2 of them. So you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's this small margins. I know obviously people want wins, but the fact that you've got points in 3 of your 4 games,
Yeah.
I think shows that. I mean, it's close, and this is.
Yeah.
This is the NHL. Now they've got the Flyers and the Blackhawks. Next week is really charitable because after Saturday against the Flyers, they've got 1 game in Chicago on Tuesday before they're home against Pittsburgh. So,
Right.
Any sort of whining about travel or tired teams, it's just not applicable in this case.
No.
But you talked about an important thing here. Pettersson didn't get any points, and we'll get into more of him later. A good column from our colleague J.J. Adams.
Yeah.
But you can sit here and freak out about the results and say, well, they finally won a game.
Right.
But they haven't been terrible. And again, more sports cliches, trust the process. If they play like this, you believe they're going to be in competition, do you not?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was something I wrote about last week. Rick Tocchet himself said it, and obviously had a vested interest in the spin, but he wasn't wrong when he said it looked terrible, but it actually wasn't that bad when they played Calgary. And then the next night against Philly, I mean, it was a defensive masterclass. They shouldn't have lost that game, but they didn't do enough on offense. On the whole, they are playing well defensively. And then, of course, they get this excellent performance from Kevin Lankinen, who it's kind of wild to see a guy who is sitting there unavailable, who's of this quality. The marginal difference between him and the likes of Jeremy Swayman and Jake Ottinger are not that big. Like, those guys have a longer track record. They're a bit younger, and they're getting paid, and he's not. And it's about what you give your goalie a chance to do. And Artur Shilov's obviously had a tough night on opening night, but he didn't have a whole lot of help. But you need things to go your way, and you can create a lot of that yourself. And the Canucks are defending well. And again, they need to keep shooting. What they did on Thursday night in Fort Lauderdale was very much what they need to keep doing. And it was the story of their season last year. That generally they outshot their opponents. They generally took better shots than their opponents. And generally that meant they scored more than their opponents. And they won the division because they had that hot start, obviously, which has some luck as well. But the fundamentals of the team are all there. They just need to obviously keep doing it because they've only done it. We're 4 games in. There's a long way to go. There's 78 games left to play. But the fundamentals that we saw last year appear to still be there. And they need to keep working on that.
Well, speaking of that, where do you think there is the most potential for growth? Scoring, defense, goaltending, special teams?
Well, special teams for sure. I mean, they're still finding their way on the power play. It is no surprise that Jake DeBrusk has, I would say, a work in progress. He hasn't done anything egregiously bad, but he hasn't blown you away saying, oh my God, this guy's amazing. But listen, he is too good a player for this not to work out. He fits the way he wants to play, fits the way the Canucks want to play too well for this not to work out. He's got the right attitude, right character, all that stuff. So, they see him as a bit of a linchpin on the power play. The whole power play as a whole needs to be better, but I think they're finding where. I mean, JT Miller it wasn't just Elias Pettersson that was poor to start, first couple of games. JT Miller wasn't great. Brock Besser finally burst out on the scene last night in a way that we hadn't seen. He also didn't score, but finding the puck, creating opportunities to shooting the puck. A volume shooter like that is going to score. So that's all kind of tied together in one big package with the power play. But and so that's why I highlight the power play, because that is a key item to drive all this. If those guys are all playing well, the power play is going to play well, so on and so on and so on. So I think that's the easy answer there. That to me, again, and that's also we said it before the season. If the team's going to be elite this season, that was one of their failings last year. Is that the power play was kind of in the middle, and it's been kind of in the middle for a while, no matter what they want to say about Bo Horvat. To get into that upper 20% in the elite, they need to be a little more dynamic, get better at moving the puck, creating opportunities, get the goalie moving, all that stuff.
Well, I'd heard for over 50 years that the Vancouver Canucks needed a quarterback for the power play. And you look at the brief spikes, a couple of years of Paul Reinhart, a year of Jeff Brown, and that did make a difference. Even, Christian Ehrhoff in the year in 2011. And they have Quinn Hughes there. And then you look at pure offensive players who have shots like Pettersson and Besser in particular. There's no reason why this power play shouldn't be one of the top ones when you have that guy who can move the puck out of the back. So I don't know what the key is to unlocking it, because those ingredients have been here for a while and through several coaching staffs hasn't really had the devastating impact that can win a playoff series for you. But as you said, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and I do have to laugh because you're right. I mean, this has been a story forever that they need a defenseman, and then now they have the guy. The other thing, I apologies whoever pointed this out. I think it might have been Shaw, but pointing out the velocity on Hughes' shot on his goal was something else.
Yeah.
The guy has put so much into his game. And I laugh a little bit because everyone thinks, well, you have to be big to shoot hard. I'm like, no, you have to have good technique, and you have to have, just because you don't have big muscles doesn't mean you don't have strong muscles. Elias Pettersson won the hardest shot, and everyone says that he's skinny. So it's about technique, and it's totally
about. It's like you don't see bodybuilders on the PGA Tour. It's about
that too.
And
yeah. So anyway, listen. There's enough. We've said this so many times. There's enough talent here that this power play should be really, 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 really good, and maybe they'll figure it out.
I wanted to touch on something that JJ Adams wrote for us. Again, it's at theprovince.com. If you are not signed up for our Canuck Report newsletter, please do so, because that means you won't miss a story, a video, anything we do. Just sort of talking about the legacy in this town of not necessarily turning on stars, but they're guys, especially once they get paid and they have those expectations that sometimes they undercome some criticism. And there's so many, you go back to Pavel Bure, who's one of the players he cites, also Ryan Kessler, maybe deservedly. Funny, we did a poll on it and I threw Trevor Linden in there and he's leading where it says who has been the most unfairly treated by fans. Now, maybe that's more from his ownership day, like his battles with ownership as the team president. But JJ's sort of writing it on a lot of the criticism that Pettersson has got. Now, it's not just the start to the season. You talk about how well he played last night, but he did not have a great playoff. What is there a Pettersson breakout that you would expect to come? What's the disconnect there? There'd been a lot of, when he burst onto the scene in the city, there was a lot of talk about his death stares, his jousting with media. Is he happy? Examination of his Instagram account. Is he working hard enough in the offseason? Like, there's a lot of noise around him, which surprises me a little bit for how talented he is. But I guess if you don't have 5 goals already in the season in 4 games, and you have the price tag that he has, he's an easy target.
Well, yeah, and he's a guy that he's not a conventional. In his own way, he's not a conventional, boring hockey player. He doesn't say a whole lot, right? So, he's not super quotable or anything like that. He's very cautious about what he does say. But there's a person there. There's a personality there. There's a guy that has a desire to stand out a little bit. I mean, certainly a passion to win, to win at hockey, something he's done his whole life. And the fashion sense and all that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's some of it is just how you engage with the people around you, and that is a sort of a worldview that you have, and how that represents itself outwardly is what people will pick up on. And certainly the way he's played excited people, got people out of their seats, got them thrilled, but the sort of connection, that emotional connection, he's never really, and I don't know if he's interested in it or not. Like I said, doesn't say a lot, but the way JT Miller clearly thrives off the energy of the building. I mean, Quinn Hughes is the same, but JT Miller's a guy like that, right? You think about the way, the likes of Marcus Naslund or the Sedins. I mean, those were quiet, reserved guys, but they still saw the passion in the building, and they drew off of that, and there was a way for them to connect. And that's just not, I think, really who he is. And so that's where some of that reaction comes from. As for a breakout, I mean, absolutely. Like this is a guy he's in that window now where it's okay. He's had a good game. He needs to keep doing, the goals are going to come. Like, he had a couple of scoring chances. The puck just didn't go in. Right. Like he set up a couple plays. Like, there were things happening with him on the ice. They're going to come back. At least if he keeps doing that. And yeah, there's your breakout. And you go, again, I've mentioned this ad nauseum since it happened. But last January, think about that road trip that opened the year, and how dominant he was, and how important he was, and how vital he was to the Canucks' success. And that player did disappear. Like, that's the player we've seen for the most part in the.
Well, he did disappear in the playoffs.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like that talent is still there. He was, for the most of his 6 years in Vancouver, he's been that guy. And then he had these struggles, and you're right. Like, he hasn't scored 1 goal in 39 games, and even 1 even straight goal in 39 games or whatever it is. Like, that is not historically the player he's been. And it's not like,
it's also not what you expect for that price tag either, which brings its own yoke of expectations, right? Yeah. And maybe that's where some of the fan angst comes from.
Oh, it absolutely is where exactly. Like, he's supposed to be the star player. He had been the star player, and now he hasn't been playing like a star player. So what the heck happened? And I think, like I've said more than once, at the bottom of all this is the player himself and what he wants to do and how he wants to make it happen. And really, there's only one guy that can fix this, and that's Elias Pettersson.
Fabulous. Who's been... Okay, well, we've gone for a while here, but I was going to save this one. I'm going to ask you now. Who's been the most impressive newcomer to the team for you?
Newcomer? Well, I mean, Lankinen, I think. I've been quietly impressed with Derek Forbort. Obviously, he's away from the team right now for some family reasons. But the way Lankinen has stepped in and played like the goalie the Canucks needed him to be and hoped he would be, has been a really cool story. And, certainly a guy that if he keeps this up, it's going to be good for him in the long run. That you go look at how, the Canucks are certainly right now talking about doing a triple-headed monster in goal and keeping 3 goalies on the roster, which is not a common thing, but some teams do it now. And in the end, you have a guy who's clearly number 1, and then you have 2 guys that kind of split the rest. But if Lankinen keeps playing like this, he's going to push Archer Shulovs down the list, and he's going to get the bulk of the non-Demko starts whenever it is that Demko comes back. But certainly doing a lot for himself in the long run, because here's a guy that's, I think he's 30. He's playing for, literally playing for a new contract. He's on a 1-year deal. And he's been fun. And, selfishly as a reporter, he's been a breath of fresh air. He's a really nice guy to talk to when it's a day off. You can talk about whatever. And, he's got a new mask coming. And he's just been an interesting, insightful guy.
Yeah, speaking of masks, Alicia Harris did a nice story for us on Thatcher Demko's mask, and she's our arts and entertainment editor. So had the connection with this new Apple iPad that they were using to create it with the artist. And she asked him, when are you going to come back? I know there's sort of strict rules around this. And Demko says, hopefully this year. So, look, goaltending depth is always good. And then, if everyone's back and healthy, maybe you have a chip to play at the trade deadline. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Canucks created themselves a position to add whatever, and they actually have some cap space is such a weapon to have. So, this team's obviously they've got obvious needs on the blue line. We've talked about that, and I don't think they're in a rush to make anything happen. But this team's going to be a work in progress for a while.
2 games before we'll do another video next week in Philly, in Chicago.
Yeah, 2 wins.
Yeah, I think I'm
calling it. I mean, they played pretty well against Philly last week. Flyers frustrated them a little bit in terms of obviously the Torts style defense first all in mentality. But I think the Canucks built themselves a little bit of confidence there on Thursday, and we'll go guns blazing. And then Chicago obviously still has Bedard and all that, but also they're Chicago and they're just not very good. So the Canucks should win that one.
Great stuff. Thanks, Patrick. And you can read Patrick's stuff, including election stories. He's shown his virtual. He's been drafted into our news side to cover some election stuff for the BC provincial election on Saturday. So you can read Patrick's analysis of the Canucks and analysis of David Eby and John Rustad. So have all that. Sign up for the Canuck Report. Go to theprovince.com. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you next week.